Native Canadians are believed to have migrated from Asian lands about 11,000 years ago. For thousands of years, they hunted on the land, fished in the waters, and gathered wild vegetation. The first Europeans arrived about 1,000 years ago, when Leif Erikson, a Norse seaman, and his crew were blown off course when attempting to sail from Iceland to Greenland. Instead, they wound up on what is today Canada's east coast. It took about 500 years before any more Europeans would arrive. In 1497, and again in 1498, John Cabot, an Italian explorer whose voyages were underwritten by the English government, explored much of the coastal areas of what would someday become Canada and the United States, especially on his second voyage, whose route is shown here. Cabot's exploration party returned to England with glowing reports of rich fishing waters in the western Atlantic. Within a few years, European fishing vessels made yearly voyages to these teeming waters. But it wasn't fish that brought Europeans to the mainland. It was beaver. For in Europe, beaver pelt hats had become all the rage, and the popularity of those hats fostered a large market for beaver fur. To assist fur trappers and traders, the French set to work, building several small colonies in the late 16th century to act as a base for the fur trade. The area around these colonies was called Acadia. But the colonies were not permanent settlements. That would come later in 1608, when Quebec, the first of many French settlements, was established. Quebec was headed by Samuel de Champlain, a noted geographer and explorer. Champlain eventually became governor of what was called New France, a large area of northeastern North America ruled by the French king, at that time Louis XIII. Louis gave large portions of land in the New World to some members of the French nobility. They, in turn, rented those lands to commoners for a portion of the crops harvested and animals trapped. It was the same system that was used in Europe. France's 17th century adversary, England, especially King Charles II, kept a wary eye on French developments in the New World. The British monarch had his own plans for establishing a presence in North America. In 1670, Charles granted the Hudson's Bay Company exclusive trading rights to all the lands whose rivers and streams drained into Hudson Bay, a huge area encompassing hundreds of thousands of square miles. To counter this intrusion, the French and their Indian allies attacked English forts in the Hudson Bay region in the 1680s, but were unable to defeat them. Skirmishes between French and English forces in North America, one of which is shown in this battle map, were seen throughout much of the early 18th century, as the rivalry between the two European powers continued. Finally, large battles broke out in Europe in 1756. Called the 7 Years' War, it covered almost all of the continent and even beyond. In North America, for example, British and French forces fought to gain control of each other's New World lands. In North America, the 7 Years' War was called the French and Indian War. When peace returned to the region in 1763, England, the victor, took over the eastern portion of what would someday become Canada, an area that previously had belonged to France. But the English never insisted that its new citizens of French ancestry adopt English customs. In 1774, in the Quebec Act, England recognized the Roman Catholic Church in North America, to which most French settlers and their descendants belonged.